for starting out, this is watercolor paper that I'm going to be using. It happens to be a 90-pound watercolor paper. And what we're going to do is I'm going to create 2 cards with this, and in order to do that, I am going to cut this in half. So fold it, and then I'm going to cut it in half, and just like this, and then we're going to paint it. You know me, I love praying watercolor, so that's the watercolors that I'm going to be using. But for this project, you can use anything that you want to use. You know, any kind of watercolor, you know, that you want to use. You can even use acrylic paint. If you use acrylic paint, you have to thin it down so it kind of looks like watercolor. You want it to have the watercolor look on it. That's kind of the whole point of this little project that we're doing, is have a little watercolor on it. So I'm first just going to get some water and put on my page, because basically what we're doing is we're going to do, the page is going to be all one color. And how about we do, this one is going to be purple. So I sprayed my little pods so they'd have some water in them. And then I am getting the paint and putting it on the page. Since we're going to be using POSCA markers or paint pens for this project, we want to make sure that we get a lot of color on our page. I know that some people say, oh, you got to tape down your watercolor because it buckles. Yeah, you can, but we're going to paint it all one color, and then we're going to put it aside so it can dry, and so I'm not doing all that. I really like this magenta color that I have in my set, so I want to put more magenta on it. Ooh, I didn't like that. I don't like that color. So I'm gonna take up some of that color. I didn't like that. So I'm gonna go back in with my magenta and fill it in. And as long as it stays wet, you can clean up what you don't like by getting a paper towel and blotting what you don't like on there, and as long as it's still wet, and then you can add whatever color you want to add and blend it in with whatever is on here as long as it's wet. So it is really wet. It's goopy wet. Oh, this is so fun. I love this. This is so fun. Now, we're going to be using these POSCA pens, so we do need to make sure that we put plenty of color, one more time, put plenty of color on here. Otherwise, the POSCA markers or whatever will not show up as white as you want them to. So we want to make sure we get lots of color on our page. So now this is ready to go. I am going to put it aside, let it dry. All right, so this is dry and ready to go. Kind of have to, it's all wrinkly, but that's okay. So it's ready to go. I'm going to fold it in half. And as you can see, when I fold it in half, I didn't trim perfect. So I'm going to go back and trim off this white Won't take but a second. Get some scissors and trim that off just a little. And it looks like it needs to be trimmed down here too, so I'm going to trim here. Okay. Ooh, still didn't trim very much. Still need to trim just a tad off right there. Alright, so here is our card. This could be the front or this could be the front. It really doesn't matter. I don't know which one I like. I'm just going to go with this one. The next step is that we're going to get a piece of paper. And sometimes you want to practice what you want to create before you actually use paint, because paint is permanent. So it's totally up to you if you want to do this or not. But what I do is I fold this is just a copy. This is copy paper, or this is just the printer paper. What I do is I fold it in half, and I just get my pen, and I'm going to create a heart, start in the middle, draw out, and back around, and come down here. If you need to put a dot down at the bottom so you know where you're going, that works really well. So you're going to go up and around, and then you're going to come down to this dot. And then you're going to do another arch and another heart inside, and you want to come down a little bit and follow that line around. And then what I do is, you can do it with a pen, you can do it with a pencil, you can do it with a marker. I just go in and divide up this outside border like that. And then I practice. And what I mean by that is this is Zentangle. We're going to do some Zentangle drawings and everything. And this is where I practice my Zentangle drawings, like the curvy lines. Maybe you do a curvy lines and then put stripes in your curvy lines. Do another curvy line. And maybe there's no stripes there, but you put stripes in this one. Okay. So what I do is I practice before I get started with my paint pens. Just to let you know, I have provided a practice page that has little squares on it. And I've also provided a sheet of ideas for simple patterns or more advanced patterns. I've provided all that for you. It's also here in this. I'm also going to put it in the video, but it's in the downloadable document. So you can practice before you get started, before you start on your card. That would be a good thing if you haven't ever done this before. Maybe you've already done it before. You don't need to practice. I get it. Okay, so we have this card, and now we're going to create a heart that's fairly even. That's kind of what I'm trying to do. And in order to do that, I'm going to take this is just a piece of copy paper. We're going to fold it in half. And then we got to figure out how large do we want our heart to be. The heart can't start here and go all the way down here, or it will fall off the size of the card. So I'm just going to create a heart that isn't quite the size, that maybe starts here and maybe ends here. So I'm going to do 1/2 of the heart. So I'm going to take my pen, pencil, you can do a Crayola, whatever you want to use, and you're going to start and you're going to go up and curve around and down to the bottom. Now, you may have to practice 2 or 3 times if you've never done that before. I've done it many times, so it's much easier for me. And then what we're going to do is cut it out. Like that. Then I'm going to open it up, and there's my heart that I'm going to, well, see, and I made it too big. So the heart's too big unless I want the heart to go over the edge. You know, that might be okay. Can you tell it's a heart? I made the heart too big. Okay, I'm going to trim my heart down just a little so it fits better on my card. I made it too big. That can happen. Okay. I'm going to trim this heart down just a little. I'm just following around and trimming it just a little. There. So it's basically the same thing, just smaller, and it's still too big, but that's okay. I'm going to leave it the way it is this time. And what I'm going to do is get my paint pen, and I am going, make sure you got to make sure that the paint is coming out of it. I'm using a white POSCA paint pen, and what I'm doing is I am going to lay this in the center where I want it to be, and I'm going to go around the heart. Actually, since this goes over the edge, oh, I'm not. I'm just going to leave it in the center, and I'm going to go around with my paint pen and trace around my heart. So I'm better, you got to hold it still or the page will come up, because this is not cardstock, it's just a piece of paper. So you got to hold it down really still, really hard, so then you're just tracing the outside of it with your paint pen. I have totally fallen in love with these paint pens. They are so wonderful. Once that's done, there's your heart. And just like what we did here, we are going to take on the, go in the inside, maybe come here, make a dot right there, and then come up from the bottom and make a dot right there. And then we're going to follow this line. We make sure follow this line all the way around to create this heart. And then you're going to pull it down to the bottom. So you're going to pull it up, and you're going to try to keep whatever this distance is, you want to try to keep the same distance all the way around. So you go up, keep the same distance, and go all the way around, and then follow it down. And there's the inside and the outside of our heart. Now we're going to do what we did to our other heart, is we're going to go in and we're going to put in all of this Zentangle or doodles on the outside. So the first thing we're going to do is take our paint pen and we're going to divide up our heart, however you want to divide it up. And each section's going to have a different pattern. Now at this time, I'm using the larger paint pen. You can use the larger paint pen, or you could get a smaller jelly pen. Remember, we've done the jelly roll pens before. And you know, I keep saying we've done this before. I don't know if you guys were around when we created Christmas cards. So last year I created a class with Christmas cards that have patterns in it. And of course, since it was Christmas, we did snowflakes. We did stars also, But that is something that if you missed out on that art class, I am offering it again next year. This is the Valentine one. So if the paint was kind of thin, you can always go back over your paint that you've already put on here. You might have to go really slow over it so then the line's not too thick. But if you think it's not white enough, you can go back over. Try not to smear what you've already have on there. Because remember, this is paint. So the paint pen, if you put your hand on it, it'll smear. You don't want that to happen, right? Okay. All right, I'm going to use my Jelly Roll pen to come up with some fun patterns. You know, these are, like I said, these are some patterns from my Christmas card collection. In fact, I should get those out and show you. If you missed my Christmas card class last year, then, you know, I am going to offer the class again. We learned how to paint and create patterns and then Christmas cards. It will be offered again probably next November. All right, so now we're going to get in here with our jelly pen. And let's see, how about we do... At this time, I'm going to speed up the video and you can watch me create all the different patterns and then we'll finish up the card. The next step, I have provided all of these, I have provided scripture that have to do with love and how God is love. And now we're going to decide which scripture you want to put on your heart, and we're going to transfer, we're going to transfer whichever one you want to put on your heart, So this is the one I want to do for my card. A friend loves at all times. Proverbs 17:17. So I'm going to put that right there. The best way I figured out how to do this is figure out which scripture you want, and then you want to cut it out. And then we're going to flip it over. And because this purple is darker than maybe a pink would be, we need to use a white chalk. We need to use a piece of white chalk or a white pastel of some sort to scribble on the back so I can transfer the words over onto the purple heart. So I'm going to position it on my card right there. And then I'm going to get my pencil again. And make sure the tip of the pencil isn't too sharp, because you can punch a hole through the page, and you don't really want to do that because then you might punch a hole in your card. You don't want to do that. Okay, no punching holes in our cards today. Okay, now we're going to go back over the, we're going to trace our lettering so then everything is in the right position on the card. Now, if you have good handwriting and you just want to write on your card, you can totally do that. I just don't have good handwriting, and I'm not good at that, and I want it to be positioned just right So then it's easier for me to transfer what I want to say to my Valentine. And your Valentine can be your mom. Your Valentine can be your dad. Your Valentine can be anybody that you love and respect. Now at this time, we're going to take our white paint pen, POSCA paint pen, and we are going to trace over the letters that have been transferred onto our Valentine's card. The scripture is a little small, so I'm going to use the white jelly pen to trace over that part of the lettering for our card. And then the next thing I did was you still have chalk on your page, so what I'm going to do is get a large paintbrush and just brush off the rest of the chalk off the card. So after we have this on here, something you can do is not put the scripture here. You could put the scripture down here. That's another option for the scripture. And so now what I'm going to do is I am going to add more of the, I'm going to put another line around here and put in more decoration for this card. At this time, I want to stop on my card, but what you can do is you can continue to do more and more and more designs. It's totally up to you how much you want to do the designs.